This is your 2 News Oklahoma Fantasy Football Forecast.
Love that song. That's a banger.
I was gonna say, you hear that one a lot.
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
No Caden today, but we are here.
He has an excuse that I don't know if I approve of it or
Sure.
not. I mean, it's this
Okay.
big game going on, OU, OSU.
Yes.
I mean, that's not till Saturday.
I know, yeah.
What really does he have to do between now and then?
Right. So, what does he got to, like, he knows about these teams.
Yeah.
Does he got to study or something?
Sure.
Who studies?
Who's playing? Hold on, Slink. I got to go look at this. I'll be back later. I'll be back next week. Yep.
Which, I mean, I would have thought he would have wanted to show up after he, I was hoping for the Monday night miracle for my team last night and didn't work out. Fell 5 points.
Oh, you didn't end up winning?
No. So in fourth quarter, Laporta needed like a catch, which you assume if he gets a catch, it's about 5 yards.
Yeah.
He dropped one.
Oh,
that would have been like for sure. Like that would have been it. Just dropped it. Like if he was not even covered, fell right out of his hands.
Wow.
And that was it for me. So
wow. So what's your record now?
What is it? I think I'm 5-3.
Okay.
I think
Still
afloat.
Yeah. I'm one game behind you then.
Yeah. And then Caden ended up winning by 0.2 because he was facing Jimmy G last night, who was bad.
Jimmy G was awful. Yeah, it was funny watching Kane in the studio last night. He's like, "Do you see my situation?" Because Kane, he's just a passive type player. Just here for the fun. He was all into it last night.
Oh yeah,
it was quite interesting to see.
It's fun when it comes down to a Monday night game when you're just waiting for that. Like when it's just like, okay, I'm watching maybe one, maybe two guys.
Yeah,
because then you're living and dying with every play.
I know. I hate fantasy for that. I can't handle the stress.
Yeah, that's how I was with every snap. I was like, it's got to go to Laporta. It's got to go to Laporta. So that's how that shook out. We've been talking about Annie Brown's unstoppable team. She took the L last night.
Barely though.
Barely,
and still put up a heck of a lot of points.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. It was like she. Oh no, she didn't make it to 160.
Right, and she blamed the loss on me.
Oh really?
Yeah, because she said we were in the weather office last week. She's like, would I play Evan Ingram or T. Higgins? And I go, in a flex spot, when you already have a tight end, why are you playing another tight end? I mean,
sure. Yeah.
Well, she should have played.
I mean, I think most people would have gone with T. Higgins there.
Yeah, you go receiver instead of when you've already, in a flex spot, it's just, that's very rare.
Yeah.
Unless you have Kelsey.
Right.
Then that's a different story.
So she has a close loss, ends up trading, making it. I wanted to hear your thoughts. I don't know if you saw this trade go through.
Mm-hmm. I approved of it, so yeah.
Oh, I guess being the league manager, you would have had to have seen it. So she, after taking that loss, trades Kyron Williams, who's on IR right now, for Kyler Murray, who probably won't be back this week, but could be back the week after.
Yeah, and I looked at that and I first said, oh, man, we're giving her a quarterback. But then, I've read some rumors that Kyler might not play until 3 more weeks down the road.
Yeah.
And Kyron will be back, I think, next week or the week after. So, a starting running back for a ailing quarterback, I found it pretty even as much as I don't want her to have any more success.
I was going to say with both sides, there's a fair amount of risk.
Yes.
With Kyron, initially they said this ankle thing was nothing and then they placed him on IR.
Sure. Right.
And then with Kyler, you have no idea what that's going to look like at this point,
And why would you bring him out? Well, let's say this. You want to see how he is, but he gets hurt again. Then you're all out next year without a quarterback.
That's true. And that's where I was wondering, like, I'm surprised, maybe not surprised, but we all thought that if the Cardinals were going to trade a quarterback, it was going to be Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
And they end up trading Josh Dobbs to the Vikings, which makes their situation all the more strange.
Yeah.
Because you would have expected, obviously, their quarterback situation was not great. They had Jaron Hall is probably going to get the start this week, regardless of them picking up Josh Dobbs.
Which I want to say a guy that I trust immensely with draft analysis and rookies coming in. He comps him better than Will Levis.
Sure. Okay.
So I found that very interesting. He'd like to see him go. He's of course not a big Will Levis fan, but
sure. I mean, Will Levis this past weekend, him putting up all those points was kind of unheard of, just because in the preseason he was not good.
No,
Malik Willis was ahead of him on the depth chart, and we all saw what Malik Willis did last year. It was not good for him either. So I don't know if that's just a product of, I mean, his 3 touchdowns were all to DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know if that's a resurgence thing there, or if like what that says about who. But obviously Will Levis did really well, and I mean, if that's the case, then sure, they'll at least get a look at Jaron Hall, but they obviously gave up some draft capital to maybe try to stay in this thing and try to fight for a wild card spot in the playoffs or something like that. But
yeah, I think
know.
it's, if you're a Justin Jefferson fan, I think it's a little promising just for the fact that I think if he was going to be out the rest of the year, I don't think they would really go after someone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And thinking, okay, well, we'll get him back, and at least we'll have someone that can throw to him.
Right.
And keep us alive.
Yeah. And Dobbs has been good, and his success has translated to, at least on that Cardinals team, Hollywood Brown's success.
Yeah.
So
I think he's been fantasy good.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Real life.
He's been putting up points. As far as contributing to team success, maybe not as much.
Yeah. If you're a Hawkinson fan, you love this because, I mean, look what he's been doing with, Trey McBride just last week.
Yeah, that's the thing. That was a big, if you pick that guy up and started him, he had a really good week this last week, led all tight ends in fantasy scoring with 25.5. So that worked out really well for them. I'm curious to see what the Murray situation ends up being. This is not only for the NFL with the trade deadline being today, for the league. It is a big, sort of make or break sort of week feeling in a lot of fantasy leagues with, right now the difference between, like, if you're at 7 wins, you're feeling 6 wins or 7 wins, you're feeling really good about your playoff chances.
Yeah.
5 and below, like somewhere between 5 and 4, you're kind of on the edge. Anywhere below 4, you're feeling a little squirrely about your chances.
And now's the time you got to, the trade deadline for fantasy is coming up in not till Thanksgiving. So you still have 3 weeks, but now's the time. If you're going to make the push and try to win it, you got to do it now. You got to pull the plug. I'm facing the same dilemmas. You've got a killer team. Are you going to trade Jefferson?
I could. Well, that's the thing. He's obviously on IR, and I'm struggling when it comes to replacements for him right now. And with, my other big draft pick was Nick Chubb, and he's out for the year. So I have McCaffrey there, and he's obviously a no doubt guy who I can go to no matter what. But
defenses still haven't figured out. We need to stop McCaffrey. We're just gonna let him score every single game.
Well, and it's one of those things that they might be letting that happen because the Niners have been losing.
Mm-hmm.
The Niners are on a little 3-game skid, and there's, besides the absence of Deebo Samuel, there's not really anything else that you're missing compared to the team that seemed unbeatable earlier this season. So that's kind of one of those things that you're wondering how that'll shake out going down the line. But that's the thing. Trading Jefferson, I certainly could. It would have to be like, obviously, you'd have to convince somebody that Jefferson is going to play down the line,
right?
Especially like in a non-dynasty situation. You're really trying to figure out, okay, is this guy going to be worth it for me down the line, for me to give up real assets that would be worth it for me as the person trading him away?
Well, yeah, I would if I were you, I would go to someone that's like an Annie and be like, hey,
yeah,
I'll trade you Jefferson. You'll have him in the playoffs, but help me now.
Well, can you imagine that team with her team with Justin Jefferson? Oh, sure enough, I'd face her in the first round, and I'd be like, oh, here we go.
Here's the problem, though, with fantasy. A couple weeks ago, I was like 4-0 in my other league, just sitting, telling you I knew everything about fantasy, and now my team's the worst team. So what can look so amazing and so brilliant can fold so fast in front of your eyes, and it will sting and just pull the knife out of my heart. That's all I need right now. Just pull it out. Yeah. Because when you're in a dynasty like myself, you're like trying to figure out, like, well, gosh, next year seems so far away.
It does.
You know,
especially when there's always the thought in your mind, even if your team's record is like, even if you only have like 2, maybe 3 wins right now, you're like, I could go on a run. I know. You're always telling yourself, but I have a chance.
Yeah, I have a chance. And that's good. You want everybody to still think that they can still fight. You don't want anybody just folding early. But in Dynasty, you really got to make these decisions, and draft picks come up because other teams are willing now to pay first-round picks for your players, so that way you can go, okay, well, I'm just going to rebuild for next year.
Right. Yeah. So with that, similar to the Justin Jefferson question, I wanted to ask you about Devontae Adams. We saw him last night, clearly frustrated with that situation. Everybody's like, free Devontae Adams, get him out of there, because that, offense is just not doing it for him. If you are a fantasy manager who has Devontae Adams, are you doing everything you can to trade him, or are you kind of stuck?
I mean, personally, I'd trade him. But then it's difficult because people are going to be like, "Oof, the Raiders,"
Yeah.
Oof, that quarterback situation. So I mean, you're kind of you need to wait. What you need to do is the next time he goes off, then trade him immediately.
Right. Sell high.
Sell high immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'd think, it seems like every week they're like, you're expecting this like resurgence, like okay, they haven't been going to him, they got to start going to him. When are they going to go to him? And they just don't seem to do it. And he's open on a lot of these plays. You see it, and I mean, maybe that
wide open,
right? And sure, that could be a product of Jimmy G not having enough time on some plays, but other plays he's just missing them.
Yeah, that's a mess. In fantasy, I stay away from messes.
Yeah,
it just avoid messes as much as possible. If you're in a mess, try to find the clean areas and go to them. And,
right.
Cling on for dear life.
Right. So we'd mentioned briefly Will Levis in 2 quarterback leagues. I mean, he's with a lot of guys going down these last couple weeks, a few bye weeks to mention later on. Will Levis certainly seems like a startable option for your QB2 spot.
The draft analyst that I really highly respect is Matt Waldman. And if you want to go find him on Twitter, I just watched a whole breakdown of Will Levis. And what happens is the first 4 to 6 starts for rookies tend to go off really well. Mm-hmm. They're really good. And it's not until week 4 or 5 that defenses have enough tape on them then to start throwing things and really mixing things up. So then they start to see a downward trend. So ideally for this game, because we just came from Sunday and so short, I would start Will Levis this week.
Sure.
Start maybe the next 1 or 2, and then you got to really pull back, and then you got to figure that out. So you have a couple weeks.
Yeah, and you at that point, they could even, like, if Levis starts really, really struggling, at that point, you're assuming Tannehill may be healthy by then, and if they're in a playoff contention, then you have the wonder of what who are they going to pull, who's going to get the run, that sort of thing.
Right, and teams know this. That Vrabel knows this as well. So he might say, well, hey, Will's our guy next year for sure.
Yeah.
But right now is he still getting acclimated? We want to win, and
right.
I don't think Tannehill's the guy.
Right. Yeah.
But also I think it tells you something that they were able to see as well. Like, because Malik Willis has been the second on the depth chart the whole season. Will Levis has been out every single game, healthy scratch, and they came in and were like, no, Will's going to be the guy. So I think that tells you a lot right there that they do see something. I mean, they picked him.
Right, that's the thing.
They traded up to get him.
Yeah, trading up to get him. You're taking a quarterback 2 years in a row, like with a fairly early pick, relative to where you're at, while you have Tannehill on your roster. So obviously they're saying Tannehill's not the guy, and they're clearly starting to say like Malik was not.
Yeah,
was not the right choice. Which I
think it was a previous GM as well.
It might. Yeah, there was some change over there.
But I do want to say one thing. I'm not a smart football guy. I'm just a fan. But when you see Will Levis, you see, at least in my eyes, I'm like, he looks like a great quarterback.
Well, that's what it reminded. It felt Herbert-esque, like rookie year Herbert-esque, where like when he was, like the arm talent looked like it was there.
Yeah, he's so tall.
Right. Yeah.
Is he like 6'7", 6'5", something? He's just tall.
Yeah.
And he looks like that old school 1990. Just drop back and
right, like what used to be the prototype quarterback before, like the Russell Wilsons and the Drew Brees.
Yeah,
some of the more shorter but like precise kind of guys.
Some could say maybe there's a comp to Josh Allen minus the running.
Yeah,
because Josh is typically that tall.
Yeah,
slinger.
Right. That's where I would say that's where I think it made me think of Herbert, just because like. Herbert, like he can run, but doesn't run as much.
Sure,
and he's
makes sense.
Doesn't have as much like touch, but still like can get it into tight windows.
Yeah,
That's That's kind of what I saw.
But when you got DeAndre Hopkins out there, why not just sling it around?
Oh yeah, it's the old, it's Mahomes, like the same way that he's like, Kelsey's out there somewhere. Tyreek Hill, when he was there, he's out there somewhere.
Yeah, and you got Derrick Henry to your left, like just
right, exactly.
hand it off to him.
Yeah, that team has been built to have a good quarterback. They just have not.
Right. So I mean, what Matt Waldman did point out is what Atlanta came and did is stack the boxes. They were going to stop Derrick Henry.
Yep.
And, evidently that failed on him very, very horribly, but that was their plan. And he feels like Steelers are still to come out, stack the box again to stop Henry because they feel like that Henry's still their best guy to beat him.
That's the thing. I'm gonna let Will Levis beat me until it's very clear that he's going to beat me every time.
I know, right? Yeah. No, that's true. And that's how Atlanta felt. They're like, Leia, let this Will guy beat us.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh's probably still thinking, luck of the draw, one game.
Oh yeah, and like Mike Tomlin's a smart guy, but like you said, like without the repeated success on tape, you don't exactly know what you're getting from Will Levis. And I'm sure Tennessee will play it differently as well, like having more trust in him.
Yep.
After 1 week.
Yep.
So you'll have more to see there. Talk about.
Can you tell I picked Will Levis in my my fantasy rookie draft last year? So I only had second round. I always trade my first rounds because I'm an idiot. But anyway, I had 3 second rounds, and I picked. This is a little because my fantasy is going so bad. I just need to cling on to something. Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Yes.
I'll pay you later. I picked Will Levis, Josh Downs, and Tajay Spears.
Okay,
and I feel like those 3.
Yeah.
I could play for the next 3 or 4 years.
That's the thing. Like, Caden was in here last week saying like Josh Downs, like that's going to be a dude who can play in this league for a lot of years. And Tajay Spears clearly starting to take some of those touches from Henry. And then, we'll see what Will Levis continues to do.
Tajay looks good. It's just he doesn't have the opportunity right now, which we hope he will next year. So, okay, go on. I had to remind myself that all is not lost.
Yeah. Some of the one of the top performances, I just want to point out, Jahmyr Gibbs last night looked pretty good.
He looked phenomenal.
Yeah, he was.
As a David Montgomery owner, I'm just sitting there going, oh.
Well, and it's one of those things like even with Montgomery, should he still be out the next couple of weeks or so? The Lions are going.
He'll be back after this bye.
Yeah, they're going into a bye.
Yeah.
But should Montgomery be out any more time?
Don't even speak that into existence.
Jahmyr Gibbs is not going to continue to get 26 carries.
Well, no, look. I watched that game. You did too. It's very clear that it looked like he was running through ghosts. Like LA was like, or the Vegas was like, whew, whew.
Right.
You can't see that. Maybe you can.
Oh yeah.
Through your podcast. Yeah. You're just going, whew.
Yep.
I got him.
Mike is grabbing the air, but not getting anything.
I mean, it was like, and then what was hilarious was, so he came in and they're like grabbing Ghost, and then they bring in Reynolds. And it feels like, they played real defense.
Yeah, Reynolds is kind of, he's a big time run directly into the line and fall down.
Well, yeah, and he fumbled twice.
Right. And great team guy, but Craig Reynolds, it just isn't, he's not Jahmyr Gibbs.
He's not, but it was weird. It's like the Raiders were like, yeah, we'll go and play defense against this guy, Jahmyr Gibbs, woof, woof.
No, yeah,
and then Reynolds come in.
Right. Gibbs had his coming out party, 29.9 points, led all running backs this week in PPR leagues. Absolutely an outstanding game. I would not obviously he's going to continue to be a startable player, but not going to be like an RB1, RB2, more like flex feeling with that until we've seen that again, similar to until we've seen that multiple weeks in a row.
And if you can and you're in a dynasty, go get Tajay Spears. Yeah. Because my friend Matt Waldman, I call him my friend. He has no clue who I am. Yep. Yeah. Comps him to Jamal Charles.
Okay.
So that gives you ideas.
That would be good. That'd be pretty good.
Amazing. Anywho.
Yeah. So want to run through some of the injuries, depth chart sort of updates.
Okay.
We mentioned Kirk Cousins, Kendrick Bourne for the Patriots. He's out, torn ACL. That obviously boosts
Pop Douglas.
Demario Douglas, Devontae Parker, and then maybe you see a few more touches for Juju Smith-Schuster, but he seems to be out.
Go get Douglas.
Yeah, if there's anybody that Mac Jones is going to throw to. It's going to be that guy.
It's not going to be fun.
No, he'd still.
And if you're starting Douglas, then you go.
That's the thing. It's a desperation play if you're starting him. But those will be the guys who get the boost out of that. I mentioned earlier some more quarterbacks having injury issues. Matt Stafford dealing with the thumb that he suffered apparently when he caught that 2-point conversion during that game. So he's dealing with the left thumb issue. Brett Ripien came in this last week and he was serviceable, but the Rams just obviously aren't the same. Stetson Bennett not playing yet. He's apparently dealing with like off the field sort of issues. So that's why he wouldn't be the natural backup to Matthew Stafford at that point. Not sure if Stetson Bennett will even play this year. Kenny Pickett, questionable with ribs. He seems to be questionable every week. He's got something going on, They
asked him if he was going to play today, and he said for sure.
Yeah. Obviously that's one of those things. If you're starting Pickett, then you're already hurting. So it's one of those things that how much do you really care about it?
You only care because if you have Deontay Johnson,
yes,
Trubisky tends to throw more to Deontay. Pickens gets more from Pickett. Yeah, and I think it's just because they kind of have the same last name. I think that's
probably what they're doing.
Yeah. Pickett is coming from Pickett.
That's right.
And they're Scottish.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And so we'll see what happens in Atlanta. Desmond Ridder went out into concussion protocol.
Sure he did.
But they said that they cleared him, but they kept Heineke in there anyway.
They went to lame quarterback protocol.
That's right. They said this guy's not working out protocol. So they sat him. Heineke played. I haven't seen any updates on what that'll look like this coming week, but clearly Ridder's not the guy. So Heineke would be worth watching there. He's been fantasy viable in the past. It's just a matter of will he be able to find those receivers better than Desmond Ridder, because just about anybody could, I think. In New York, you imagine Daniel Jones might finally be back this week. Tyrod Taylor went out and Tommy DeVito went in, and that game went to overtime in a game that
Danny's older brother, Tommy.
And it was a game that nobody wanted to continue, but went into overtime anyway. Jets ended up winning that one. And then on that same note, Darren Waller went out with the hamstring.
Can we pour one out for Waller?
I know, yeah. It's just one of those things. Every year it's something. But
I know. It's a shame as a Waller owner.
Yeah, so that's one that's worth monitoring.
And you don't want Daniel Bellinger.
Yeah.
They barely used Waller, you know?
Right. Yeah. So possible pickups this week. I mean, if he's not already on a roster, Taysom Hill is having that sort of point in the season where, like, if you need a tight end, you could stream him.
And then you use him and he gets 0 points.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things. But he's been starting to take some goal line touches away from Kamara, which I'm sure can be frustrating, but Kamara's been doing really well regardless. So, it's one of those things that if you're needing some tight end help, then he's sort of a boom bust guy.
Right. And then we have a fraud alert coming up.
Oh yes, Miles Sanders.
Oof. Yeah,
yeah. He's
fraud alert.
Rapidly losing touches.
Yeah.
One of those things that it could just be the state of the Panthers offense.
Well, this is where I pay way too much attention to football in my life, and I need help. Mm-hmm. But they did tell the crew that was calling the game before the game. They were like, yeah, Chubb is pretty much our starter where they'll sprinkle in Miles now.
Yeah.
So, you kind of get those bits of information, right? Mm-hmm. From those commentators right before the game. Yeah. So Sanders is now a backup.
Yeah.
For now, and that could change.
Right.
But
which is, it's just unfortunate when you think about what the state of fantasy drafts look like. Like Miles Sanders was in that mix of like RB2 range guys getting picked, So Chuba Hubbard obviously taking over a lot of those snaps, and, depending on how if Carolina can ever have a lead on any team ever, if how that offense ends up shaking out, if they get to run the ball more, then Chuba would obviously have a lot more value there.
I will say, watching, because I just acquired Adam Thielen last week, and I watched that whole game. Yeah, I'm shocked how much they use him.
They use him on like screens and stuff, which I was like, what?
They like got him lined up as tight end. I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, they are very much using him like he is a young, spry wide receiver.
And he looks really good.
Yeah.
He's 33 years old.
It's one of those things, like he's one of those guys who, like, he's not really outrunning you, but he's finding all the spaces. Yeah. He is always open.
Always. And he should have had a touchdown the other day. Got a little unfortunate. But yeah, that's really intriguing. I did notice they were trying to incorporate Mingo a little more.
Yes.
You know, your new offensive coordinator, I think they said, let's get the young guys, and actually started out a lot of Mingo. And I'm like, oh, and I just traded for Thielen. And this is way where we go. But then, bam, bam, bam. It was like Thielen.
Oh, yeah.
He scored like 10 points on one drive.
Yeah, I imagine regardless of who the offensive coordinator is this year, Thielen's going to continue to be a pretty big part of that offense.
Hey, ride it until he dies.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
So let's talk buys. Denver, Detroit, Jacksonville, San Francisco, all on buys. A lot, a couple of these teams really need those buys to come by, especially San Francisco. It feels like they just need to rest, get healthy, and figure out what the heck's going on there.
And it's weird. Jacksonville, real quick. Trevor Lawrence. I don't know. This guy was supposed to be the next Joe Montana. He is all he throws to is this running back.
They're winning games.
Now, I get that. He's winning. He did catch fire late in the season last year. Maybe after this bye, they come back and he's throwing dimes. I don't know.
Could be, yeah.
It's just something weird about him.
It is.
There's something weird.
Yeah, it doesn't seem, the offense doesn't seem like it's built around him as much as it used to. It feels like, it's ETN and a bunch of guys.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm shocked Etienne's doing that well, but here we are.
Oh yeah. I've got him in one league. I'm sad about this upcoming bye week. I got to find a plug for him. So let's talk Sunday Night Football this week. We've got Buffalo at Cincinnati. An actual good sounding football game.
Yeah. And I might actually have Josh Allen on my team by then. So
right, there you go. That's something to watch for.
Yeah.
Burrow, has been really showing that he's sort of back into that top 5 sort of range of fantasy quarterbacks. Just, he's had the last couple weeks, and you can see he's probably fully healthy at this point, if not, 90%. And he's really been reviving that offense. Joe Mixon has taken over that backfield. You're used to, in years past, you had like Samaje Perine back there who would take away some of the touches, nothing significant, but enough. Yeah. Mixon seems to be the, every down back, no matter what right now in this offense, which is, good for now. You wonder how long that can last, going forward. And then one other note for this one, fantasy wise, there is the slight surge of Khalil Shakir on the Bills, and the last 2 games he's had 10 receptions on 10 targets, 127 yards. If you're one of those people who, like many, who are struggling to find whether it's a flex spot or a wide receiver plug here and there, that's certainly a guy to consider coming up this week. As of this morning, he was projected to 7.9 points. Obviously, this one, if it turned into a high scoring affair, that could, result in a pretty big boost for him.
Yeah, I would go get Shakir if you could.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Dawson Knox out, Shakir seems to be the guy.
And with that, it is time for our prime time forecast.
Drum roll.
Prime
time forecast.
So you got a win last week, I believe.
It's about
me and Caden both lost our props here. So Caden said he is going to go over on Joe Burrow.
I think that's a wonderful call. Wonderful call. I'm going to go on the over for Shakira.
Okay. I'm going to go. We're all going overs. This is certainly to be a 10-9 game. I'm going Stephon Diggs over. I'm going over that 22.9.
Okay.
And that will be our primetime forecast for this upcoming game. And I got Caden this week.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Look out, buddy. I'm coming for you.
I've got the guy that's got AJ Brown, Jamar Chase.
No.
Yeah.
It'll be a tough week.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough week.
All right. For Mike Collier.
Hello.
I'm Ryan Love. See you guys next week.